Bharat Maharaj from text 1 to text 10. Text 1. Sri Sukadeva Goswami continued, My dear king, one day after finishing his morning duties, evacuating, urinating, and bathing, Maharaj Bharata sat down on the bank of the river Gandaki for a few minutes and began chanting his mantra, beginning with Omkara. Text 2. O king, while King Bharata was sitting on the bank of that river, a dove being very thirsty, came there to drink. Text 3. While the dove was drinking with great satisfaction, a lion which was very close roared very loudly. This was frightful to every living entity, and it was heard by the dove. Text 4. By the nature of dove was always afraid of being killed by others, and it was always looking about suspiciously. When it heard the lion's tumultuous roar, it began very agitated, looking there and here with disturbed eyes. The doe, although it had not fully satisfied itself by drinking water, suddenly leaped across the river. Text 5. The doe was pregnant, and when it jumped out of fear, the baby deer fell from its womb into the floating waters of the river. Text 6. Being separated from its flock and distressed by its miscarriage, the black doe has crossed the river and was very much distressed. Indeed, it fell down in a cave and died immediately. Text 7. The great king Bharata, while sitting on the bank of the river, saw the small deer bereft of its mother floating down the river. Seeing this, he felt great compassion. Like a sincere friend, he lifted the infant deer from the waves and, knowing it to be motherless, brought it to his ashrama. Text 8. Gradually, Maharaj Bharata became very affectionate towards the deer. He began to raise it and maintain it by giving it grass. He was always careful to protect it from the attack of tigers and other animals. When it itched, he petted it, and in this way it always tried to keep it in a comfortable position. He sometimes kissed it out of love. Being attached to raising the deer, Maharaj Bharata forgot the rules and regulations of the advancement of spiritual life, and he gradually got to worship and he gradually forgot to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After a few days, he forgot everything about his spiritual advancement. Text 9. The great king Maharaj Bharata began to think, Alas, this helpless young deer, by the force of time, an agent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and has now lost its relatives and friends, and has taken shelter of me. It does not know anyone but me, as I have become its father, mother, brother, and relatives. This deer is thinking in this way, and it has full faith in me. It does not know anyone but me. Therefore, I should not be envious and think for the deer, my own welfare will be destroyed. I should certainly raise, protect, gratify, and fondle it. When it has taken shelter with me, how can I neglect it? Even though the deer is disturbing my spiritual life, I realize that a helpless person who has taken shelter cannot be neglected. That would be a great fault. Text 10. Even though one is in the renounced order, one who is advanced certainly feels compassion for suffering living entities. One should certainly neglect his own personal interests, although they may be very important, to protect one who has surrendered. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pradeep Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Krishna Prabhu, whenever you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, Prabhu, it's clear, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Hare Krishna, thank you all for joining today's Bhagavatam session. And thank you, Pradeep Prabhuji, for reading today's Bhagavatam section translation. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 8, Slokas 1 to 10. So this is a new chapter, and it is very instructive and a lesson learned for a practicing devotee. Talking to myself. So we'll start with the prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pachatta Deshatarani. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktaranda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're in 8th chapter. The title is Description of the Character of Bharata Maharaj. And in the previous chapter, we heard about the activities of Maharaj Bharat and the section of Bharata Maharaj. So in the last chapter, we heard how he, by the order of his father, Lord Rishabhadev, married the daughter of Vishwarupa, Panchajani, and how he ruled the world very peacefully. Because of his expertise in ruling, this planet became known as Bharatavarsha. And previously it used to be Ajanabha, but after Bharata Maharaj's ruling, it became as a Bharatavarsha. And then we heard how he had 5 sons and how he performed the religious principles very strictly, following in the footsteps of his father, and how he engaged all the citizens in the Varnashrama activities, ruled very nicely. And then afterwards, he divided his kingdom between his 5 sons, and then he left home and went to Pulahashrama to dedicate his life in the path of bhakti. And because of his strict practice in the path of bhakti, he advanced in the spirituality, and these ecstatic symptoms were visible in his body. And in this chapter we hear, as I said, it is very instructive. Although Maharaj Bharata was very elevated, he was advanced in the path of bhakti, but this chapter tells how he fell down from the high level position of the path of bhakti because of attachment to a angry deer. So in the sloka 1, we see that Maharaj Bharata, after finishing his morning duties, so he sat down at the river of the Gandaki and then started chanting the mantras. In the last chapter also we heard Maharaj Bharata is very strict, is very rigid in executing religious principles. So without fail, every day he used to wake up early morning, finish his morning duties, and then chant his mantras. And this is a very important for a practicing devotee or trying to be devotee like me. So as talking to myself, Srila Prabhupada also gave this wonderful process for us, like waking up early and then chanting our 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra attentively after finishing our morning duties as much as we can. And if we can also do like how Bharata Maharaj strictly followed in performing the religious principles every day, we can also advance in the path of bhakti and taste the bliss of the devotional process. And in the second sloka, we see that Maharaj Bharata sitting on the bank of the river. What happened? So at that time, a doe came. So the deer. So what is the situation of the deer? It is very thirsty. Pipasaya, very thirsty. And it came to this river to drink the water. Of course, we'll hear the situation of the deer. So it is a pregnant deer. And in the third sloka, we hear that while the deer was drinking water with great satisfaction. And what happened? At that time, there was a lion very close by, and it roared very loudly. And because of that, what happened? This deer became very fearful. So, and this is it's the situation of in this material world for everyone, So here we see that the deer is nicely drinking the water with great satisfaction, but suddenly there is a threat. So similarly, one may be thinking that he or she is situated nicely in this world with a nice job or good income, nice house, wonderful family. So they may think that they don't need to practice Krishna consciousness like that. But we don't know in this material world what would happen next moment. We don't know. So Bhagavatam says that padam padam etri padam. So every step there is a danger in this material world. And we hear this. Many instances, somebody who is having a nice job and perfect job, so suddenly they will lose the job because of the cost cuttings or some things going on in the office like that, or maybe they go for a walk on the beach and all of a sudden there will be a tsunami comes, or they're driving nicely in a nice car, but there could be a road accidents, so there's so many things, That's why it said padam padam padam. Every step there is a danger. So that's why knowing that in this material world, the life is very temporary and full of problems. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. So it is full of problems and temporary. So that's why it's very important. One should mold our activities in centered with Krishna consciousness, so that we can go back home, back to Godhead, where there are no dangers at every step. Natesham. Every step there is no danger. And in the fourth sloka, we see that this deer is afraid of being, by nature, the deer was afraid of being killed by others. So it looks like this is the nature of the deer. So it's always afraid being killed by others. Prakriti Viklava, like that. So that's why it is looking very suspiciously. It's looking here and there. Chekita Nirikshana, like that. And what happened is when it heard the loud roar of the lion, out of fear, it leaped across the river. So it hadn't fully satisfied itself by drinking the water, but because of the threat, so it suddenly leaped across the river. And we will hear what happened after leap jumped across the river. So in the sloka 5, we see that the deer was pregnant. And when it jumped out of fear, the baby deer fell down from its womb into the flowing waters of the river. And Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so the woman has a greater chance of miscarriage if she goes through the either fearful situation or ecstatic emotions. So that's why in many cases we see that when the woman is pregnant, sometimes their parents will come and they will take to their home to avoid any these kind of situations, either fearful situations or any ecstatic emotions, so that there will be a smooth and safer delivery. So, but Prabhupada mentions that if she is at either our in-laws home or with her husband in their house, she should be taken care very nicely during that period of time. Of course, apart from that, it is also recommended to her to read spiritual subject matters like Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, or Chaitanya Charitamrita. Especially, it is recommended to read Krishna book and also chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So not only the delivery happens smooth, but also the baby inside the womb, he becomes purified, or he will become calm and peaceful. Otherwise, we heard in the earlier cantos, the situation of the baby in the womb, it is very miserable, suffering. But unfortunately, I think as the society is advancing economically, or the modern society, we see here sometimes the pregnant woman, they go to pubs, there is a loud music in those pubs, hearing those noisy things, the baby becomes more horrible, he becomes more anxiety. Or else if the pregnant woman watches horror movies, so that gives trouble to the baby also. So that's why it is very important when the woman is pregnant, she should be taken care very nicely, and she should also uh, be very cautious in her activities. And in the text 6, we hear that being separated from its flock and disturbed by its miscarriage, the doe, having crossed the river, it was very much distressed, and it fell down a cave and died immediately. So when we see in this sloka, of course, definitely because the mother deer got miscarriage, and the baby deer fell down in the flowing waters. So definitely this will be a very distressed situation for the mother deer. So it's miscarriage, tat prasava. And also the mother deer is in a fearful situation because it heard the roar of a lion. So that's why it leaped across the river, and after crossing the river and being in very distressful condition, so it fell down in a cave. And after, because of that, what happened? It died immediately. Mamara, it died immediately. And in the text 7, we see that the king Bharata Maharaj, who is sitting on the bank of the river, he saw this situation, like the whole situation, where the pregnant deer hearing the roar of a lion, which became afraid, and then there is a miscarriage, and it crossed the river, and due to the distress, it fell down in a cave and died immediately. So this whole situation, Bharata Maharaj saw, because he's sitting on the bank of the river. So that's where the deer came to drink the water, and this whole situation happened. So now Bharata Maharaj became very compassionate. Of course, Prabhupada mentions in the purport that devotee is very compassionate. Paradukhi dukhi. So when he sees the others in distressed or unhappy situation, he also becomes very unhappy. But Prabhupada mentions in the purport, one important thing is devotee should be compassionate by raising one from the material platform to the spiritual platform. So one should not be compassionate of the material platform of others. So it should be when one is compassionate, when the devotee is compassionate, we should bring that person from the material platform to the spiritual platform, so that way one can become peaceful. Shanti Brichati. Otherwise, what happens is the compassion on the level of the material platform, it would spoil the devotee's spiritual advancement. So that's what we saw in this section of Maharaj Bharata. And Prabhupada mentions that Maharaj Bharata is a great king, and also is very advanced in the spiritual position. Like, it is mentioned that he reached to the point of loving service to the Supreme Lord, prema, stage of prema. But we hear, even though he reached to that level, he fell down onto the material platform because of his attachment to the baby deer. I heard from one devotee that Maharaj Bharata reached to the level of Mahabhava, like in the stage between the Bhava stage and the Prema stage. Like here in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are 9 stages in the devotional process. Like Adav Shraddha, Tata Sadhu Sangha, Ata Bhajana Kriya, Tato Anartha Nivritti, Shat Tato Nishta Ruchis Tata, Ata Asakti, Tato Bhavas, Tata Prema. So there is initially Shraddha, faith, and then there is the Sadhu Sangha, association with the devotees, and there is a Bhajana Kriya, chanting of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And due to that, what happens? Anartha Nivritti. So all unwanted habits will be removed. And then one becomes Nishtha, firmly fixed. And then he develops the taste, ruchi. And then he becomes attached to the process of bhakti, asakti. And then he elevates himself to the bhava stage, and then prema. So Maharaj Bharata, he was elevated or advanced in the path of bhakti, where he is in between the bhava stage and prema stage, love for the Supreme Lord. So he reached to such an exalted position. And Prabhupada mentions that Still he fell down because the laws of nature works very subtle and it is unknown to us. Even from that platform, he fall down into the material platform. So as long as we have these attachments, then we cannot be able to liberate or go back home, back to God. And Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita 2.15 sloka, Samadukka Sukham Dhiram, So one should not be disturbed by happiness or distress. Only then they will be eligible for liberation. So that's why Prabhupada stresses in this purport. One should practice Krishna consciousness very cautiously. Should be very cautious. So then only we can go back home, back to God. So otherwise we will take birth again and again and again and again like that. So we'll see in the life of Maharaj Bharata also, like how he accepted another body, the deer body, because of his attachment to the baby deer. And we hear in the next sloka how he became attached to the baby deer, and due to that what happened. Like here we see that he became very affectionate to the baby deer and began to rise, and he's giving grass and he's very careful to protect attacks from the tigers and the animals. And when he teached, he petted it, and he always tried to keep the deer in comfortable condition. And he sometimes kissed out of love. And because of that, what happened is Maharaj Bharata forgot the rules and regulation for the advancement of spiritual life. He was very strict in following the rules and regulations earlier, but because of this attachment, so he forgot the rules of and regulations of for advancement in the spiritual life. And not only that, he forgot to worship Krishna, the Supreme Lord. And later he forgot everything about his spiritual advancement. In the purport, Prabhupada stresses the need of executing our spiritual activities every day without fail. Of course, in our case, chanting of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra every day, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare, every day. And then follow 4 regulative principles, like no meditating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex, like that. Prabhupada mentions that if we neglect this, then we will also fall down from the path of bhakti. So whatever the advancement we are made or we are progressing, we will also fall down. So that's why it's very important to rise early in the morning and finish our morning duties. Possible attend Mangala Arati, but chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And in the rest of the day, if there is a opportunity or time, so read our Vedic literatures, especially Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. So as much as we can, as best as we can. Of course, I'm talking to myself. In this way, we can be able to stay in the path of bhakti. So otherwise, Maya is very strong. So we don't know that how Maya entered into our life also. Like it is said that so Maya will come into our life as a small needle, but when it goes out, it is like a plow. So it will plunder all our bhakti. Like a small example, like if our kids are watching some movie, we are chanting in a different place Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. When we heard, we thought, okay, let me see what they are watching. When we go and we want to watch like just 1 or 2 minutes just to see what they're watching, but the way it works is like Maya will force us or induce us to watch the whole movie, and we'll end up spending many hours watching that. So that's why Prabhupada mentions that it is very important to perform our spiritual activities very strictly, because that only will purify us. So anartha nivritti, it will remove our unwanted things. So and Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita 18.5 sloka, like Yajna Dana Tapa Karma. So this Yajna, of course in Kali Yuga, the Yajna is Sankirtana Yajna, chanting of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So these activities will purify us. And it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, not only as even it will purify the great souls also, than what to speak us. So that's why it is very important for us that we practice our Krishna consciousness very cautiously and very strictly, very sincerely. So this is what we learn from the pastime of Maharaj Bharata. And in the 9th sloka, we see that how Maharaj Bharata is showing compassion or sympathy on this motherless deer. So he's thinking that, he's helpless, young deer, force of time, it lost his relatives, friends, and it took shelter of me, and I have to protect. So I have to raise it nice. And Prabhupada mentioned that devotee is definitely soft-hearted and compassionate. So as I said, it's paradukki dukki. So when they see others are unhappy, so they will also become unhappy. This is one of the symptoms. But Prabhupada mentions that if one doesn't know of the material suffering of fallen souls and becomes sympathetic because of bodily comforts, such sympathy, what happens is, so it makes one fall down. So if we are compassionate or we are sympathetic to the fallen souls, then what the devotee should do is should try to elevate those people from the material consciousness to the spiritual consciousness. Because in this case, Maharaj Bharata, he forgot that it was impossible for him to elevate the deer to spiritual consciousness because it's an animal, the deer, and it doesn't have that much consciousness to be elevated into the spiritual consciousness. And it was very dangerous for Maharaj Bharata to sacrifice all his regulative principles or the practice of his bhakti just to take care of an animal. So he gave up the whole kingdom, but here he became attached to the deer and he forgot his practicing of bhakti. So that is, Prabhupada mentions that it is dangerous. And that is one thing that Prabhupada tells to us or stresses us to be very careful. And in the last sloka of today, the 10th sloka, so here we see that, so even though one is in the renounced order, one who is advanced certainly feels compassion for suffering living entities. One should certainly neglect his own personal interests, although that may be very important to protect one who has surrendered. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport how Maya works very strong on the people of this material world. So he says that in the name of the philanthropy, so people are feeling compassion for suffering humanity, which is good. But what philanthropists cannot understand that it is impossible to improve the people's material conditions because based on their karma, so they would get those reactions. So karmana daiva nitrana. So this will work under the direction of the Supreme Lord. So it's already established. Based on one's karma, they will go through the whatever the facilities, whatever the situation that they need to go. So it cannot be changed. So it cannot be, the material or bodily comforts cannot be increased or decreased. And Prabhupada quotes Bhagavatam 1.5.18 sloka, saying that Tallabhyate dukkhavad anyata sukham, like, it says that as far as the material happiness is concerned, that comes without effort. How the suffering will come without effort, even the happiness will also comes without our effort. If we have a good karma in our bucket, then the happiness will come in this material world. So that's why it says that Prabhupada mentions that the material happiness or suffering will come without any endeavor. So that's why one should not bother for material activities. So instead, one should focus on the path of bhakti so that we can escape from the cycle of birth and death, or we can burn all the reactions of our karma. So that's why Prabhupada mentions that so one should serve these fallen souls or suffering living entities, raising them to the spiritual platform so that they can become calm and peaceful like that. So that's why we hear devotees saying that yes, the philanthropy is good, serving the living entities, providing some food or whatever the needs that they have it. But ultimately, it is not best. So, and devotees gives an example also, like, suppose a child who is the son of a rich father. So he goes away from his father and working very hard. And in the due course of time, he forgot that he has a rich father, and he is going through so much suffering. And suppose someone who knows this boy, knowing that he's the son of a rich father, became compassionate, and if he feeds that child for one day, which is good because feeding the boy, but that doesn't solve the issue, because it's one day food will not help him to take care of his body rest of the life. So, and if someone else become compassionate and he some or other provides some small job where he can work hard and then maintain his life in a temporary based, that is better, but still it doesn't help him to come out from the hardships or suffering. But if someone is really compassionate and he understands that he is the son of a rich father, and he feeds him nicely on that day, and he also inspires him or educates him that you are the son of the rich father, so you better go to your rich father and he will take care and you will not be suffering anymore. So in that way, if he connects that boy to the rich father, then all the problems will be solved. So similarly, if a devotee rises this fallen souls to the spiritual platform, from the material platform to the spiritual platform, then Krishna will take care of them. So they'll go back home, back to Godhead, and they will be relieved from this dukkha, or the full of problems, and where I will be elevated to the spiritual world where there are no dangers. Natesham, padam padam atripadam. This material world is mentioned as every step there is a danger, but when he goes back home, back to God, there is no dangers, and he'll be very happy and peaceful. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that this whole pastime is arranged by Krishna using Maharaj Bharata as an instrument. So just to teach us that not to be misled by so-called welfare activities conducted in a bodily terms. So, and involving in those, if one gives up the path of bhakti, then it is dangerous. So the bottom line is it is very important for us to practice the path of bhakti sincerely and seriously. And also, when we see the fallen souls or suffering condition living entities, so we should be compassionate and raise them to the spiritual platform, not on the bodily platforms. So that's what we learn from these 10 slokas. In the next session, we will also hear more about this pastime. I'll pause it here. Thank you all for giving this opportunity. Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vranda ki jai.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Krishna.